Hi, everybody. Oh my goodness. My journey gets more and more interesting as the days go by. So, I'm back here in Nairobi in my apartment from South Africa. And South Africa was an interesting trip. So, I'll first start with just saying, like, the fact that before this trip, before like this whole journey began, that I've only been to two countries on the continent, and now I can add one of my dream countries and another one that's going to be very interesting, I feel, by far, is a blessing, like, on its own. Like, I've been talking about going to South Africa for the longest time. Like, outside of France, that's like my next biggest obsession. And I got to go to Cape Town. I got to go at a very last minute request. And while like a part of me, for whatever reason, really wanted to go to Johannesburg, I guess because I feel like that's the like real authentic South Africa, everyone that I was talking to was saying that no, Cape Town is better. And I don't know if that's like a response in terms of like, well, it's the nicer part of South Africa, or that's where like more resources are poured into, and therefore like it's a more touristy vibe to it. I don't know. I mean, for sure, like walking into Cape Town, it felt like I was in Times Square or like Lower East Side or something like that. Very beautiful streets. My hotel was actually in was right adjacent or parallel to one of the most famous streets that are out there, which is Long Street. And like all along that street, there's like cafes, there's bars, Beer House. Shout out to Beer House. They during my last night had like a beautiful beer tasting party, and they were just like getting us all drunk for free, which was, I'll never pass that up. And like free food as well. So that was pretty awesome. Quick recap. So today was cool. It was fun. I got to meet some interesting people, major players in the Africa investment world. So I met him. I met a couple of major people who are founders of major accelerator programs out here in Africa. Spoke to a lot of interesting startups that are doing really cool work to address several different issues going on, including access to power, cleaner energy, environmentally responsive products. Healthcare was a major one. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool.
So we want to make Africa one of the top in terms of investment attraction and the growth to accelerate. So the fact that today the amount of investment is less than $1 per habitant on this continent, when it's $50 in Europe, $150 in the US, we have a lot of catch-up to do. So that's really our mission. You know, we are here not to do a nice event and give some awards. You know, that's just the show part of it, but really to create those opportunities for investment. So,
and there's no one who has the capital who is willing to plug that gap. And so the discussions that are happening are public and private sector, where it's almost one-to-one matching.
But I think there's something that's missing in that conversation, in my opinion, right? The first thing is, and this is something that particularly is of interest to me, there is a government role, and I think that role is literally going to be, you know, for example, when I make investments in a business that fails, can I claim that loss on my taxes? Right? Make it not cost me more than it should. I already had a business that failed. Can I just at least claim the loss on my taxes and the business that it is? But what we've learned to do the hard way is to really focus on markets and gaps in the markets that currently are not being filled but have potential to be filled. And so when we invest in a business, we have a plan for the startup. Yeah. and if our plans don't align, we don't invest.
What I'm noticing is that access to these spaces are also just still very limited. You still see like the same kinds of people attending these conferences. I'm sure because of the price. And this program, Africa Arena, did sponsor some tickets for people who they invited to pitch at the event. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I'm so happy today to be able to be one of the winner of this Phantom Challenge, the blockchain challenge, making us the best blockchain startup in Africa. So this is really exciting, and it's really exciting, and giving us more of inspiration to solve African problems, as we are trying to solve African problem in terms of land titles, making it able to people not to start having land disputes and secure their land titles on the blockchain. It's really an exciting thing for us, and we promise to keep making Africa cool. Thank you.
So that was cool, but again, it's like just a select few slots, so it's still competitive to get there. So I'm still seeing a need for access to information for a lot of people who still don't understand how to tap into these kind of resources or to these kind of networks. And I still don't believe that it's just like it should be a very selective process where there's only a certain people that deserve to be in those areas. I think that given the right kind of coaching and advice and making sure information is presented in a way that resonates with certain people and meeting them where they're at, you can see a lot more people at events like this. And the cost of getting access to these networks shouldn't be so high, just for the sake of like kickstarting a movement where there's a lot more people in this entrepreneur space, because at this point we don't need like a select few. We need like as many people as possible to be doing the work that will create more jobs and create a better quality of life for everybody. I don't believe in this whole meritocracy kind of like approach to providing this these resources to our people, just for the sake of the fact that we're starting at a very very far behind, and not by our fault at all. Some things, like, you know, for people in leadership and government, yes, it is their fault for keeping us, or keeping certain people still relegated to like lower incomes, lower access to opportunities.
Summer just finished in Tunisia. So if I be moving here in Cape Town, we can live like 12 months of summer, which is pretty nice. Yeah. It sounds quite fun. I remember I had a meeting with the Russian company. We have to give up for Russia.
Okay, starting this video hoping that I don't just ramble and ramble because I do have thoughts to share. So today, or this whole week, was very interesting. And one of the topics that's been coming up a lot with people that I've been having conversations with is the whole issue of why do we have to think of grandiose solutions to a lot of basic problems that Africa is having. I'm not sure if I had this conversation already, but or like on camera, but it's been coming up a lot in terms of like talking with my mother, talking with my aunt, sisters, and then also now I just had a meeting with one of my potential clients for the work that I'm doing out here. And so yeah, there's just a lot of talk about like we have to use technology to solve a lot of our issues, but I'm like, there's very basic things that don't require a high-tech solution that a lot of people anywhere else take for granted, and we in Africa need to like just get it together and have it once and for all. And one of the basic things I was talking about today was about like the kind of jobs that we need to bring into our countries here on the continent. And there seems to be some pushback between like having quote unquote like old school traditional jobs like manufacturing. And I was like, well, we have an abundance, like our biggest capital, or sorry, our biggest product that we produce at this moment are people, is human capital. We're gonna surpass China by far with the largest youth population in sub-Saharan Africa alone by 2030, right? So we can, and all those people need jobs, right? And you know, I used to be one of those people who was like, okay, well, the traditional sector or even the private sector and the government is not creating jobs fast enough for the amount of people who are graduating and are entering into the workforce. So entrepreneurship, everybody just start your own business and be your own boss and figure out a way to make a living that way instead of waiting for someone to hire you. And now I'm like backtracking that a bit. Like I know I'm the big entrepreneurship is the way to go person, but when I step back and think about it, I'm like, entrepreneurship out here, especially when you have people in desperate need of capital. By capital, I mean like they need money invested in them to scale up their business, and they also need like access to a bigger group of people who are going to buy their services or buy their products outside of Africa in order to like be able to sustain their business that they build. In the long run, entrepreneurship actually is not that sustainable. Like if we want to get people employed like immediately right away so that they can improve their quality of life like immediately, we need things like traditional jobs like manufacturing. And now the question is, how do we quickly scale up? Because the thing with manufacturing, and that's probably why people gravitate more towards like things like tech, IT, and like any kind of other like faster paced entrepreneurship kind of pursuit, is that it's less capital intensive, right? Like if you have a computer and you have relatively decent access to internet service, you can be a coder, you can be a software developer, you can work remotely for whoever, wherever, right? The thing about that though is that not everybody is tech savvy, you know, like I'm a person who I genuinely tried my best to learn how to do coding. Like I think the easiest language that I've ever interacted with thus far is Python. And even then I was just like, this is just not for me. Like, and I don't think that it's fair to like force people into just one type of sector and saying like, that's just the way you have to find a way to make a living. Like there's a sort of humanity that's being lost, and it's just like being taken for granted here in Africa, where it's like, okay, you're desperate, so if you're desperate and you want to change your life, just do this. Like this is the kind of job that you need to have. And it's like in the States or anywhere else, like if you wanted to be an artist, for the most part, I mean, I know that there's marginalized groups and there's a whole issue of like who actually is able to enter into the arts or humanities out in the Western world. But for the most part, like if you wanted to be a writer, if you wanted to aspire to be that, no one's going to say like, listen, you're wasting time because you need to make money right away to like support us, to support your family. you can't afford to go to college just to learn how to do writing. Like that's not something that's going to pay you back. Like find a real job. And that's something that, because of the scarcity that's present in Africa, people wouldn't be able to like aspire to, or probably would just put on the back burner and say, no, I can't do that because, you know, my family comes from extreme poverty, or my family just doesn't have the means to survive off of my writer's salary, you know. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that we're relegated to just being like, do what we tell you to do and be at the mercy of what we say is the job that you should pursue, rather than being our own, like having much more autonomy and agency around what kind of careers we want to pursue. So this sounds very controversial or contradictory to what I'm here to do, or what I'm here to like promote or bring attention to, which is the whole entrepreneurship scene in Africa. But I do think that's starting to get a little bit like tired. It's also like just limiting, extremely limiting, and I think it's a result of us being put in a position unnecessarily for a lot of reasons, that we feel like we just need to be pigeonholed into very specific roles in order to like make ends meet and survive as a people. All of that to say, like, yeah, so I'm starting to rethink and saying like we need to maybe start to promote entrepreneurship in a way that's not like so like heavy on like the tech and so heavy on like software, or like these other things that are, I guess there's so many businesses that are going into this space that's going to create a bubble. And at some point, like we're going to have way too many startups doing the same exact thing, too many investors bloating the system, putting in a bunch of money into places that doesn't make sense, and like just a bunch of companies like starting and not able to continue to sustain or keep up the progress that they started out making, because like the market is just saturated. It was just full of too many people doing the same exact thing. So we need, unfortunately, this is probably where like government policies will come into place, and you would want to rely on a reliable government to say, okay, like we need to stimulate growth in this sector, and let's give like some bonds, or let's give some like low interest loans to people so they can buy the capital that they need to like invest in property, to buy to build a factory, to purchase housing, and even go into like things like urban development, real estate planning and stuff like that. Because yeah, not everybody has the capital just waiting in their bank account to say like, let me buy up some land and build it into this, that, or the third. So then the cycle continues and the conundrum goes around and round and round. And it is completely frustrating to me. It's so frustrating to me because it's like somebody has to give. Either the government has to give, and we need people in government who have that like long-term vision. And I was actually listening to a podcast today, the BBC Africa podcast, and they were talking about how Rwanda is starting to test the ability to use electric vehicles in Rwanda. I can't remember if they said that they were thinking of actually building them, but that would be like amazing if they started to think about how they can build the capacity to just create those cars in-house, like in the country, versus exporting it and always relying on like someone like Tesla or some other multinational company outside of Africa to come in and provide those kind of like goods. That's pretty promising and exciting, and it's typical of Rwanda. Rwanda right now is one of those countries that's like really forward thinking, regardless of a lot of the controversies or issues with Kagame, who's the president right now. I mean, he's really thinking about how to like really leapfrog ahead, but in a strategic way, not just like, oh, we only leapfrog by surpassing certain technological advances that the rest of the world already experienced and go to the next thing. No, it's like thinking smartly, like what kind of things can we build, what kind of industries can we build sustainably that causes us to rely more on our own internal capital, our internal people, our brain power, rather than always worrying about like getting these things produced for us outside of Africa and then having to bring it into our countries. What else am I thinking about? So that's just one thing. I'm recalibrating my brain around that. I think, long story short, entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a techie. And I don't know why that's like such the big thing now. Like, you, in order to be an entrepreneur, a startup, you have to have some kind of tech thing behind you. And it's like, why? Like, there's no real reason. People just are saying that because they feel like that's the thing to say. And it's not really thoughtful. There's some kind of like cyclone plaguing us, because normally it's not this rainy in Kenya apparently, but like something is going on that's causing an abundance of unnecessary rain in my life right now, and it's making me sad. But on the days that it is really nice, or the times of the day where it's really nice, I'm gonna make the most of it and start filming and recording from outside. And let's continue these chats about like everything I'm learning about how to be thoughtful in being a diaspora kid and coming out here and saying you want to build and develop this continent, our home countries. Like, what do we really need to do, and how do we go about doing it strategically? And also, I just want to show off my makeup. Although, like right now, I feel like I did a little too much. Like, I'm very white in some areas, and then kind of tan in other areas. I need to work on that. But hopefully when I do some color correcting on film when I'm editing, it looks a little bit better. I'm getting there, guys. I also practice doing a wider cut crease. I don't know if you can see it, but like trying to make my eyes look a lot bigger, and I think it worked. All right, I'm gonna stop rambling and I will talk to you guys